right, welcome to a inaugural kickoff of a Catholic Fit movement and mobility class. I'm hoping to do some sort of weekly session like this or weekly series where we're going to talk about movement and mobility, a stretching class, right? People ask me all the time. They know I'm into fitness, and I know I've developed my Catholic Fit program, and they ask a lot about doing stretches that are not yoga. So I want to present non-yoga alternatives that will help you move and feel better. That's the idea of a stretch, right? So I imagine this is very important. If you're watching this video, please comment below and let me know who you are, where you're coming from. I work with a lot of people in Catholic Fit, mostly children, teachers in schools, and homeschooling moms. And what I want to know is, do I have, who's watching? Because I think this is going to be mostly homeschooling moms and their children looking for ideas for their homeschooling families, or PE teachers looking for ideas for their schools. All right. I have another channel, Dave Reddy, which is my name. But that is where maybe if your husband or you are looking for different types of stretches and mobility exercises, you can go there and check those out as well. But I kind of want to understand who my audience is. And so I'm speaking directly to you. But I'd like to do a weekly video. Maybe you and your family or your students can chime into or tune into each week. All right, but let's get moving. Each week will be about a different joint and a movement pattern. And we can add in some anatomy and some lessons as well. But let's just get moving first and talk about hip mobility. I use the word hip mobility. If I'm sitting in a chair like this, if our students are sitting in a chair like this, we need hip mobility. Our hips need to flex about that far, right? So what I do with all the students at first, and if you're sitting at home or if you're just wondering about your own hip mobility, one good exercise is to do a squat. This is a 12-inch step. Can I squat down to a 12-inch box, which requires knee mobility? My knee needs to flex, and hip mobility, all right? So that's a good test in and of itself. What did I do? I just had a Catholic high school volleyball open gym the other night. And what we did is we all did deep squats. Can we just sit down in this position here, all right, and kind of hang out in that position, right? And so can I drive my knees out to the side, and can I sit here comfortably? Or are my heels coming up off the floor? Am I wobbling back and forth? Am I sitting more like a catcher up on my toes than back, all right? So this position requires, this deep squat position requires ankle mobility, knee mobility, and hip mobility, and then some spine mobility and stability. All right. In Catholic Fit, we talk about three primary keys to good fitness. One is strength. We want to be strong. Okay. Two is cardiovascular fitness. We want our heart rate and our lungs, our cardiorespiratory system to be efficient. Okay. When we go for long walks and hikes. Number three is good movement. We want our bodies and our joints to move well. So God gave us this intelligently designed body that moves through various patterns. So in Catholic Fit, we go through all of these patterns and make sure they're all working appropriately, no matter your age. All right. So but for your hips, a couple things. So if you're just looking for a hip stretch, you just tune in, talking about your hips. What I like to do is use a box like this. I just had a 51-year-old mother of three. She was just in the studio working out. One of the things we did is to find something like this, an ottoman, a chair, a box. She actually has this in her basement. A buddy of mine comes in. He came in recently, and he bought one like this. And we do what we call a hurdle stretch, all right, for two reasons. We'll get that in a second. So just to bring your foot up onto something like this, and what I'm doing is I'm just stretching or mobilizing my left hip to make sure it can flex like this, my right hip to make sure it can extend. So the idea is that I'm stretching these muscles in the joints, but I'm also focusing on this pattern, which is a hurdle step. So if we're doing a high knee march, right, which we do in PE class, if we're standing for balance on one leg, if we're doing a layup in basketball, if we're running, doing ballet, we need this hip mobility, all right? So find something you can put your foot up on. Put it up on a chair, put it up on an ottoman, put it up on the back of a couch or a box. See, how does that feel? What will happen is that you'll feel this stretch in this straight leg. These hip flexor muscles connect from your inner thigh all the way into your lower back. So we do this stretch first, okay? If your students are sitting in small desks and small chairs, we want to mobilize their hips two ways when they get up out of their desk. One is a deep squat. All right, I'll do this up on the, well, no, I'll do it on the floor. But just to squat down like this, have your kids squat like this. Walking to class, take a break from your studies, have them be squat. Squat like this. 1 minute break. Another one, or the other thing is not only squat, but some sort of middle stretch. Now I'm like back behind both head. That stretch goes up. That's the hurdle stretch. Okay? But that's something we do. We go through. So if I set up a weekly series like this, I have a certain movement. I have a chair. Next one is a pure performance stretch. We hear a lot of runners talk about this. Pure performance is deep muscle. It's an external rotator. Sort of, we know that pure performance muscle. What that is, it's a muscle that sits deep in this position, moving forward, hitting back. And that's a good pure performance stretch. So that can, you have maybe remember dad, sciatic nerve problem. Is that bigger performance that height pressing on that curve. So back, hold back to that, just kind of listen to that. That's right there. So again, go first stretch and then right into that. All right. The last one, each leg. All right. Last stretch you can do. You can put the hand out. What we call a stretch. You can do quadrant stretch here. One of the muscles. So that's going to stretch my knee. You got young soccer players, basketball players, volleyball, whatever sport, family. That's a good stretch to do there. So all of my clients can do those 3 stretches. We might go for a long walk. We might go to work on a treadmill, do a rower, whatever we might do. But at some point during the workout, as we work on the strength and our cardio, we're going to do this stretch here a little bit, over stretch, and then this one. All right. And you can kind of check your body and all the feet. You can do that on any step. All right. So if you're not sure about a high stretch, I might have one of my 75-year-old clients on all right. Those 3 are 3 great stretches we can do. All right. How do we assess our squat, our mobility? Do that through assessing the pattern. Put on into a squat like this, and kind of see how do our knees feel, how do our ankles feel, etc. All right. So let me drop this. Let me check those in comments. If anyone is watching live, otherwise you can check this out later and comment below. I'm trying a different music too. Let's try some different music. I'm going to bring on some different music, but all right. So with your students, as you will see, if you've downloaded the free version of the Catholic Fit program, we do squats. We do different movement patterns. Your body is meant to move, and we break it down into about 10 different patterns. We start with 5 primary patterns and 5 secondary patterns. But patterns being, we squat throughout the day. We have to sit down to a chair and stand back up. That's a movement pattern. We have patterns throughout nature, patterns throughout our own movements, right? We also call them archetypes, right? So maybe in classical education, we're studying archetypes, literary archetypes. We also have archetypical positions and patterns that we want our bodies to get into. So a seated position is like this, but this requires our knees to flex like this or hips to flex like this. So just to see, can your students sit in a 12-inch box with a nice flat back? And then can you pull the chair away? Can we squat into this position? Or maybe this is tough on you, mom, or dad, or grandpa. And you want to work on this position. How do we do that? Well, one way to do it is either lying in your bed or going down to the floor. So after these standing positions, we'll go down to the floor. All right, so let's do a few stretches, right? Again, just meant to loosen up our hips. So what we'll do is we'll start on the floor on your back, right? I might just do a light windshield wiper like this first. Just check in. How do my lower back feel? How do my hips feel with this? And then to really get into my hips, I'm going to bring my feet wider, and I'm going to bring one knee down and kind of point my knee at my opposite arch or my opposite big toe. And then I'm going to switch to the other side and do the same thing. So not only is my knee going to drop, but I'm actually going to kind of push through this hip each time and get a little extra stretch. And I might feel that through my lower back, my waist, my hip. That's always a good feeling stretch. I'm just going to extend through there, back and forth a few times. I can even look with it. So if I go to the right, my left knee drops, I can look off to the right, and then I can look off to the left. All right. And if that's okay, then I can come up into kind of a half-seated position, right? Or up on my knees and do the same thing. All right. I'm going to work through this position. All right. Just back and forth. And not only the key to why I call it mobility versus flexibility. We hear flexibility. We're not really using that word as much anymore in exercise science. Mobility is more at the joint level. And then your ability to mobilize your joint through a range of motion. And so not only is this hitting the muscles, but it's also taking this bone, this is a pelvis bone and the thigh bone, and kind of swiveling that bone around in its socket, all right? So it's great for longevity. Again, 8, 18, 38, 58, 78, it's good for preventing osteoarthritis. So we've started in this position here. This feels pretty good. If this is too much or if this is enough, stay here. If you can come up into this reclined position, same thing there. And then the next one is a seated 90-90, all right? So listen to your body. Can you get into this position? Both knees are at 90 degrees. My hips are at 90 degrees. And I'm just going to sit up nice and tall here and just see how does this feel, okay? So your kids can sit in this position. If you have a break, let's say you did your morning classes and you sat down for lunch, you went for a walk, get down on the floor. I will often have my kids to sit in this deep squat position and talk like this. We'll have a 1, 2, 3, 4 minute conversation like this. Okay. Great way to unglue yourselves from those desk chairs. Then we'll drop down into a 90-90 stretch and we'll just have a conversation like this. It just hits a lot. It's just a lot of bang for your buck, a lot of return on investment, right? So as I'm sitting like this, I can then, with my flat back, bring my chest down towards my front knee, all right? And then down, I can bring my chest down towards my shin. And then I can open up even further and bring my chest towards my ankle, which now I'm going to start feeling my hip joint. I'm going to start feeling my hamstrings, all right? So hit whichever one is tough for you. Fitness is very individual, right? So this might be very easy for you. The next stretch we do might be very difficult. Just whatever works. Or this position might be okay, but boy, your hip really starts barking at you at this position here. All right. And then you can also, if my right knee is forward, I can put my right hand to the side and I can reach over and do a few rotations like this as well. All right. And then switch sides, rotate to the other side and just check in with my hip mobility on this side, my 90-90 stretch with my left leg forward and go through these same stretches. All right. So again, I'm looking at, am I going to do a 6 or 8 minute video that you can pick up some tips, or do you want to follow along as a family or you as an individual for 20 minutes, a 10-minute stretch? And I can market that, or I can rather broadcast that. What's the best word for that? And say, hey, 10-minute stretch. I won't say hey, but 10-minute stretch next Thursday at 8 a.m. Let's get together. We'll do, a 10-minute non-yoga flexibility routine. All right. So, and people have asked about the non-yoga. I shouldn't have to explain that. I don't have to explain that. There's a lot of Hindu origins to yoga. So if yoga, and so for Catholics in the house, we do non-yoga stretches. There are some universal stretches that physical therapists use that look like yoga poses. We're aware of that. We talk about that. But for the most part, well, 100% of the time rather, we are just doing good movement and mobility exercises. Look at it as a practice. We practice our faith. We practice our fitness. Each week, we're going to get together and do some movement and mobility practice. If you're interested in that, please let me know. Comment below, whether you're watching this on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, of course, or I'm going to start feeding this through catholicfit.com/live. I just want to build this community. I'm getting too many people, which is wonderful, emailing me, asking me questions, downloading the free course. So I thought, let's start a live community, start discussing these things, get our kids moving, get our parents moving, and let's get fit to serve together. All right. Thank you. God bless. I hope this helps a little bit. I hope there's a couple ideas you can use for your own hip mobility. We'll talk about upper back mobility, elbow mobility, shoulder mobility. If you have little aches and pains, we can talk about that. If you have a young athlete going into CYC, CYO, playing a sport, we can talk about ways that help them stay loose and fit for that as well. All right. God bless. Keep moving. I'll leave you with that. And I will see you next time.